thank you for allowing us to be here today. Please, please bless each one of us to help us learn, open our hearts and ears, and please bless the ones that are teaching this Bible study. Amen.
Open them. Open them loudly. Okay, so what did we finish off last week with? You guys remember? It's kind of on the board. It's okay. Number 40? Chapter 40? No, we're not there yet. Yeah, the meaning of the 40 days. We found out where other areas those 40 days are kind of represented. This is kind of like the beginning of that area, right? And then we left off with pretty much God sealing in Noah and the ark, right? Okay. You guys remember that? He was 600 years old when it happened. Yep, and we had that picture and actually showed all that stuff. Yep. Yep. Is all ringing a bell to everybody? You sure? Eric's? Okay. Wow. Okay. So now we're going to start with pretty much, I think it was at verse 13, right? Okay, you're just going into, okay. So, you want to read? Yeah, go for it, man. You got one? Okay.
Genesis 7:13 through to 16. On that very day, Noah, his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, together with his wife and the wives of his 3 sons, entered the ark. They had with them every wild animal according to its kind, all livestock according to their kinds, every creature that moves along the ground according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, everything with wings. Pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life in them came to Noah and entered the ark. The animals going in were male and female of every living thing as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord shut them in.
What? No, I mean we talked about this. We talked about this last time with like what like it's reoccurring, like the reoccurring thing, and we talked about like that it's the livestock, the ant, like how the same thing that they talked about in the first chapter, they're repeating the same thing. The wild animals, the livestock, the things that moved on the ground. So it's just for us to remember, like the Bible is very repetitive, but it's repetitive for a reason. So that's it. And then remember that all of these chapters are kind of connected with one thing, which is the Spirit of God, or the Ruach. And in this case, it's the breath of life. So we can move on.
Okay. All right, who's going to read the next one? Brother, go for it. So I think she needs a mic. There we go.
Water flooded the earth for 40 days. As the water rose, it lifted the boat off the ground. The water continued to rise, and the boat floated on the water above the earth. The water rose so much that even the highest mountains under the sky were covered by it. The water continued to rise until it was more than 20 feet above the mountains.
Okay, so on this one, again, 40 days, which it means. So every time you guys read these things, just remember these things. Like, what does 40 days mean or 40 mean?
You guys remember? What were like the 3 words that we said last time, what they meant? You guys got it. You guys, it's like right there. It's right there. You guys almost have it. It meant what?
No, it meant something about
Students
Instructions?
do it every time.
Oh, destruction?
Students take this every
kinda.
time.
it's like a test, like a
Okay,
Yes.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be repeating these things that we've learned over and over again so that you guys kind of remember. So whenever any preaching or any sermon, you kind of have an idea. So water flooded the earth for 40 days, which means that they were like in trial at that moment. So the interesting thing about these verses here is it's pretty much all these verses are describing the flood, right? So if you look at it, it says that the water rose, it lifted the boat off the ground. So now it's off the ground. The water rise and the boat floated above. What I found interesting was it says floated on the water above the earth. And so I'm like, wait, I'm picturing again my human millennial, whatever you want to call me, self thinks of like earth and just like the ground. So I was like, so here's the world, and is the ark above the earth? Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. But again, I thought about that for a second, and then I was like, wait, if we go back to Genesis 1:1, we said that God created the earth, the heavens and the earth, and the earth was the ground, or the things below, and the heavens was everything above. So when it says that the water above the earth, it means just it was above land, right? So and which makes sense, because in the next verse it says it rose so much that it was even higher than the mountains. So here's the land, and it rose even higher than the mountains. Does that make sense? So that caught my attention, because I thought about the earth as round, and then
Yeah.
the boat on top of the earth.
I mean, that's crazy though when
But
you think
that's not
about
what it
like.
means.
I mean, like if another thing we talked about earlier as far as Oregon and everything else. I mean, like we were around like a lot of mountains in that area, and if you know you've been in Colorado, you kind of know how tall the mountains are. I mean, imagine like all the times that you actually were driving and going more and more and more up to the elevation. It was really high up there. Imagine like the water being way above that, and you're on the bottom of the mountain. Like even if you get to the top of the mountain, it doesn't matter. There's still water up there, and you're pretty much done for. So it's kind of like, just get that image in your head as far as like, there's no like there's, it's covering everything. And the only people that are surviving right now is the instructions that God gave to Noah as far as to build an ark, and now it's floating. Right.
That's
Next.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Who's got this one? No, it can't be you, Daniel. Gotta be another person. There you go. Pass the mic.
All living things that moved on the earth died. This included all the birds, tame animals, wild animals, and creatures that swarm on the earth. And all human beings died. So everything on dry land died. This means everything that had breath of life in its nose didn't die in it, yeah. So God destroyed from the earth every living thing that was on the land. This was every man, animal, crawling thing, and bird of the sky. All that was left was Noah and what was with him in the boat. And the waters continued to cover the earth for 150 days.
So the breath of life is what again? The Hebrew word ruach. hmm And so, did anybody ask this question, which goes to the next? Go ahead.
Yes. I
What
have all
if-
the questions.
What if somebody uh repented? That's the word, right?
Mm.
And like
Like you're saying, like if they saw the water and they're like, oh, let me
yeah.
repent real quick before this water hits me. Mhm.
But like truly repent, like not just because they wanted to be saved.
Well, at that point, are they really
I
repenting?
mean, this is before Jesus, right? So
Yeah. Are they really trying? Were they really trying to, like, do it to save their save their lives, like live, literally, or were they? At that point,
Yeah,
I
like,
think
is it-
you're just
is it like saving your like soul or saving just your body just to stay alive for the next day?
right.
Like a lot of
Two
people.
different things, right?
Yeah, because a lot of people are afraid of dying
I
because.
just realized that.
Yeah.
Okay.
If they actually repented, they would just go to heaven.
It's like Paul said,
Mm.
like I would die. How does it go? Yeah. Then so it's like at that point, like
Wait,
know.
what'd you say?
Paul.
Yeah, I
Paul
didn't hear
said,
what you said. That's why I was like.
No. Well, Paul says like
Yeah.
that. Para él el morir es ganancia.
Oh,
y
okay.
Yeah, there you go. So at that point, it's like, yeah, if you.
Okay, I didn't know that was English
yeah.
or Spanish. That's why I was like.
Sorry,
it
I don't
was-
know the English version
Yeah.
of it.
Okay, it's cool. It's cool.
And
it's cool.
obviously, I don't know the Spanish one too well. But
Okay.
thanks, Vanessa.
But to your point, you're pretty much bringing back again as far as the breath of life, as far as showing that they're talking about it again.
Well, yeah, in a minute. So
Mm.
the verses that we just read, they said it twice. We'll come back to that in a minute because that's the main thing I kind of learned of these chapters. But there's one more question that I have. Does anybody else have any questions?
I mean,
'Cause-
like the 150 days.
40. So it said 40 days.
Yeah, it said 40 days before.
So go to the next slide.
Oh, okay.
So the question is, so
Oh, here we go.
how many days did it flood? 40 or 150?
Like it stayed continuing flooding? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good job,
Okay.
Anania. Good job, Eric. Go back.
Here we go.
Uh-huh.
Back? Okay, we go back.
Oh, so
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Oh. Oh, I was like, what are you guys saying?
40 or 150. So yeah, 40 days was actual like
Like just
rain.
downpour.
And then it took 150 days for the waters to actually. So at 40 days, it was raining, like how we see it from the sky. And then it stopped. And then at 150 at the 150th day, the water started to go down.
Mm. So for 150 days, just
It was
flooded.
flooded.
Flooded. And the water's above the mountains.
Yeah.
There's nowhere you can survive.
No.
Just
And once we
Okay.
go to the next chapter, we'll see how many more. It's not just 150 days. It's like even more for them to get off the boat.
okay. Yeah. Yep,
So,
yep,
but we'll
yep.
get to that.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right. So next then.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Oh.
now we'll talk about to recede.
To receive, yeah.
How come I've heard something about Noah was in the ark for 40 days? Like 40 days.
So later on, they start sending out like birds and all kinds of other stuff, and we're gonna get to that eventually. But there's again more numbers.
Something like that. Like it was
Yeah.
that many days, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, this man was there for like a year.
No,
Yeah.
it was. He was.
Yeah.
If
I mean,
you
you
read
can remember
next-
too. Remember before when they were talking about like when he got onto the ark, right, and everything else. They're saying how much like he had an abundant amount of food that's gonna last him for a long time, and so all those things were done, on purpose. They pretty much because God knew He's gonna be doing that for a long time. So it's kind of like I need to keep these people surviving on the boat itself. So
I heard
yes,
somewhere
yeah, go for it.
that he took 100 years to build the ark.
Oh, that I don't know.
That'd be
don't know.
crazy. But he did say, remember we go back to the beginning when God said, hey, I'm kind of getting like, I'm going to give you a little bit of time. And we said it was like, he's going to give him like 120 days. And we said, oh, is that the limit of the actual people's lives? Or is that actually like in 120 years or whatever it was, is that the time when he's going to come in and actually just destroy everybody and destroy everything? Remember? So maybe to your point,
Yeah.
sure.
maybe.
Yeah, 120 days. I mean, 120 years. I mean, that's seems about right. I mean, it probably took him that long. Yeah.
So that's the end of this chapter. But to the next question, since we're talking about the days, is when you read in the next chapter, come with an answer to how many days did they stay in the ark, and for them to actually come out to the land.
So you got 40. They're not going to be like out for 40. So
And they're not going to be out at 150 because that's when the water started to go down. So. But yeah, you'll see it in the next chapter.
yeah, I gave you the answer.
Yeah, but you're gonna know.
A
Yeah.
year. She's already giving me the answer. Okay.
All right, so you got
So
this
now,
one.
so now we're gonna talk about. So again, what is ruach? Does it? Yeah. So go to
Mhm.
the next click.
Okay.
So in Hebrew, it's a Hebrew word. It's ruach. Keep going to the next one. So
Mhm.
it's English language. It's spirit, right? And then the meaning means spirit, breath, or wind, right? So I'm gonna recap these again in case we forgot, right? So spirit. Where did we see the spirit? Chapter 1.
And what was it doing? Hovering over the
Yeah.
waters.
Go to the next one.
Okay.
So it is God's spirit that participates in creating order and meaning to something that was just waste and wild, right? So everything was just like how it is right now in the Noah's the flood. It's everything. I felt like he created it and then human did bad and now it's going back to that like water chaotics are very like
Formless and empty.
formless and empty, but except for the ark, right? So we see the Spirit of God in the beginning when he's hovering over the waters and he brings order and meaning to the world or something that didn't have anything. So it's God's Ruach that brought forth creation in the first place, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Right?
Yep.
Okay. Everybody's like, okay, so the next one, sorry, you can click.
Oh, okay.
I didn't think it was doing that, but
Yeah, it's okay.
sorry. Okay, so the next one is breath, and you see that in Genesis 2, right?
Mhm.
It says, "Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breath into his nostril, the breath of life," which is what we see in chapter 7, right? So this verse gives the, so if we didn't have breath of life, we would be, dirt and dust. Yeah, like we would just be.
She's still stuck on that one.
We would just be just nothing, like a clay. I'm gonna use a clay as an example.
Yeah, because we come from dirt, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
therefore, we're just pretty much just
Clay.
a vessel of clay.
Yeah.
Right,
So
okay.
it's not until God breathes into this clay that it becomes human,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then, oh hey, Osiel.
Ah, how you doing?
So it's not until God breathes into this clay, which is humans, that he's able to now, this clay becomes animated and he can move
Mhm.
and he can walk, right? Okay, so we got that one too?
So you got spirit
Spirit,
over the waters.
The
And then
breath
breath
is-
goes into the human.
So if you're breathing in and out, that's
The breath.
God giving you ruach, right? Okay.
Okay.
And then the next one is wind, right? And we saw that with when they were in the Garden of Eden, and then God's presence is heard on the cool of the day or the wind of the day.
And that's when Adam and Eve hide,
Yes.
right? They hide themselves and they say, "We heard you," right? And that was the wind, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're good. Spirit is actually God. He's creating. Breath is the actual, like, what we're breathing in and out. And then wind is what we see physically, or we see it with the wind.
Mm-hmm.
So then the next thing is we go back through chapter 6. Again, this is just, you can keep clicking on it all.
Okay.
So yeah, this is the 120 years. So again, on chapter 6, and I'm just pointing out the where we've already read this word ruach. So my spirit will not content with humans forever. So that means that we have borrowed the breath that we're inhaling in and out is borrowed. It's not ours. He's actually breathing into us as every single second. The next one is when the flood. He's saying that let me go back. I'm going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has the breath of life in it. So here he's already saying, hey, because the earth is so bad, I'm going to destroy everything that anything that has a breath of life, I'm going to destroy it, right? And so then the next one is he's telling Noah that to all creatures that have the breath of life in them go into the ark, right? Does anybody know what a remnant? So a remnant is a small remaining quantity of something. So in this case, what is that small quantity of something? Humans. Humans, yeah. So he's trying to kill everything and preserve this small amount of humans, which is him and his family. So God promised to destroy everything that had the breath of life, but he spares the remnant, or this human, which means that he's protecting or preserving his spirit in these humans, his breath of life, while the rest of them are being destroyed.
Oh, so I guess what you're saying right here is that, like, because he's saving Noah and his family, they're very sacred to God now, as far as when it comes to, like, hey, because you have the breath of life and you're actually using this for the purpose of good, then now I'm actually going to take your family and like you said, preserve you to say, you know, that you're going to be the next chosen people to actually lead. Right?
Yeah, because everything else that died no longer has.
Right.
There's no presence of God in them.
Right.
Only
right.
these people.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Next. So those were the verses where you could see the spirit.
Okay.
So we kept saying, and you guys understood, right, that the breath of life is in us, right? So God's spirit, is it what's keeping you alive right now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so then my question is, can I be filled with the spirit of life, which is God, but not be living in tune with the spirit of God? Yes. Does that make sense? So how does that? But then they were away from God. They were still alive. Yeah. So that was my question to me, is like, how can something, like, if God's breathing in me, something, so that means that that's something sacred. God's very, like, holy, and he, how is it that all the good people also still have it? That was my question.
Oh, so you're saying, like,
No, I have, yeah. No, but that was my, like.
So you're saying right now it's kind of like, how can people have the breath of life even though they could be good or bad either way? Like, how can you still keep that regardless of which way you go?
Yep.
Okay.
How can two things, a good thing and a bad thing,
Right.
live within you?
Right. Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, and that's what Paul talks about too, right? For the longest time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So next.
Okay, so the thing is that we humans also have ruach, which it means in the Old Testament, we were just talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
In the Old Testament, there was no word for brain. It was thought to be as your mindset, your intellectual, your conscience. So this is that's your human ruach. So there's God's ruach, and then there's human rock. Go to the next slide real quick.
Sure.
Or you can stay there if you want.
Okay.
So, sorry, let me make this bigger. It's so tiny.
It's all good.
So,
Yeah.
no, actually go to the next slide.
Okay.
So this one right here is good. So this one says, "Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord does not count against them, and in whose spirit is no deceit." I didn't understand that at all.
Okay, so the sin, the Lord doesn't count the sin against them.
Okay.
And there is no, and there's no deceit.
But they are like privileged to like that who sin, they still get chances from God.
Where's that microphone?
So go to. So I couldn't, even if I put the English and the Spanish version, I couldn't understand it. But go to. I found this one. It was.
Oh, this is the one you talked about earlier?
I found this in. This is called the kids version
Kids
or
version.
the international child's version. So I'll read it. "Happy is the person whom the Lord does not consider guilty. In that person there is nothing false." And so I just put it in Spanish.
Mm.
Huh? Okay, so in case anybody. "Bienaventurado el hombre a quien Jehová no culpa el Okay, so basically what it's saying is, okay, God is they consider guilt. So the
top right one is taller.
happy is the person whom the Lord does not consider. So the person who does no deceit, that's the person. Wait, hold on.
You mean?
Yeah, go ahead if
Okay.
you want to.
So it says, like, let's just take it one step at a time, right? So, happy is a person. So a person being happy, whom the Lord does not consider guilty. So, a person is happy when the Lord does not consider him guilty, right? So one thing is right there is like he's not guilty of anything. Everything's pretty much going right. And then the next part it's just confirming it. It's just saying in that person is nothing false, right? So everything that person is completely true with God, not guilty. Everything is perfect.
So pretty much, if a person is doing good,
Yeah.
then there's nothing that God can't find anything guilty. Okay.
Okay, here we go. She found it in
Okay.
French.
It says, according to this verse, the
Mhm.
Lord does not count moral errors against the believer who honestly and sincerely confesses them. This statement reminds us that the believer is justified, standing before God just as if the sin had never occurred at all. So that's just us, like, right? No. It's us when we're like praying, like, for
Yeah.
forgiveness,
So
right?
like, let's say that we did something wrong and we didn't intend to do it, like unconsciously or unknowingly we did something. Do you want to say something? Oh,
Oh, okay.
Un-
Clicked.
like so if you do something bad and you didn't know at that moment. So for example, like let's say that most of our parents here like were probably young, not in the faith a long time ago. I don't know whose parents were, but anybody's parents probably were in the past, had a different life, and they said, oh, back in the day I didn't know I was doing bad, but now I do, right? So God's not going to judge that because you didn't know you were doing bad back then, right? So that's what it's saying, right? Are you following? So in that person, there was nothing, there was no bad will, no deceit. That's what deceit means. It's like you weren't trying to deceive anybody. Does that make sense?
But are those people, like, let's say God comes, right? Are those people still saved? Like those people that like do things unconsciously?
Yeah, because they didn't know. Like hold on.
This is like
Maybe I
a
didn't understand the question.
psychological thing.
It's like
No,
No, hold on. I don't know if I
no,
understood
no.
the question
I
then.
think I have an example.
Yeah, no, what?
What was the question?
So-
Maybe I didn't understand it.
No, it's okay. And I think this is more like a psychological thing either way. But like, so the one thing as far as your argument, right? One argument can be that like, if somebody doesn't know they're doing deceitful things, right, then therefore they're saved and God says, hey, don't worry about it, you didn't know. But the other argument could be like, in all reality, I think most of us have a morality that pretty much says, hey, you should know what good and wrong
Right.
is, right from wrong, should be. And it's, so I think that's what Vanessa's trying to say is that, like, even though somebody is doing something wrong, whether it being that they don't know it's
And-
actually unfavorable,
well-
are they really saved or not?
Well, and
But-
that's where the deceit, was it like a deceitful thing that you did? Like,
yeah, but I think that's where like we're kind of like
Yeah.
we're kind of
Okay.
like getting two
So-
separate things kind of mixed into
but
one.
the main thing I was trying to get is that there is a spirit. What this verse is saying is that that person spirit had no deceit. Like, they didn't intend to do anything bad. So let's just keep it simple, right? Let's just pretend that person didn't know that they were doing bad, but that means that person's spirit was not deceitful.
Yeah, that's why I when I first read this one, I'm thinking of it as far as like a person that actually isn't really doing anything wrong. The one that Vanessa I think found online was more like, oh, like it's totally fine, like no big deal. I think that one was a little bit more vague as far as when they're trying to explain it, because I guess I didn't really get that one as far as when it says, what's it called? Yeah, it's just that one seems kind of. I need to find that one later on. Send that to me later on because that one seems kind of a little
Okay,
weird.
so where is deceit? Can you touch deceit?
Do you guys know what the word deceit means? Okay, so deceit.
Engaño. Engaño.
Do you know what that is in Spanish? All right, explain it to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Betrayal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you touch deceit? Can you touch? No.
The thing that you're probably gonna do, but
No,
like,
it's
the
so
action as far as they're trying to get you to do something.
so
that deceit.
no, like deceit. So what I'm trying to get is like, no, deceit. It's an invisible thing. It's what you're thinking. The action
Just like four of
is
you.
the aftermath. So is
It's like-
this is
Yeah, it is. Nice voices.
Mhm. This is similar to God's spirit. It is a series of thoughts and ideas in a mind. So that's what happened in creation. God didn't his thoughts were what created. Is that making sense?
Yeah, so you're saying in the beginning, as far as his thoughts, as far as he's like, I want to create humans, right? So then, therefore, his
And
thought.
his action,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, with
So
the
his-
spirit.
yep.
Yeah. So you're saying that in the thought process,
His
you're using that to say pretty much his brain is another word for say pretty much his spirit, as far as a different. It's the same word you're using, but
Mhm.
for a different action itself.
Yeah, so this is
Okay.
similar to God's ruach, which created earth. His thoughts are what created something beautiful here on the earth. In the Old Testament, again, like I said, there's no word for brain, so the best translation for our ruach human ruach is our mind, our conscience.
So I guess it's like when you actually were to use
Conscience,
it,
yeah.
like if you were to read a sentence and it says, the spirit of the Ruach was over the waters, we know for sure that's God. But when it's saying about a person, it's saying pretty much kind of like what Paul talks about with himself, right? It's just saying like
It's your mind.
it's your mind. But it's like, how do you know to distinguish the differences between each one when you're reading a verse?
Between which one?
Between the Ruach when it comes to the spirit, right, over the waters kind of thing, and the Ruach as far as being your brain itself. Like, is
Well-
there a way to define?
Yeah, because
Yeah,
on
okay,
this
exactly,
one,
okay, that's-
yeah, because
that's what I'm trying to
on
say.
this one here it says,
Yeah.
and whose spirit is not deceit. Like
So you're saying whose
God's
mind?
God's spirit
Yeah.
isn't deceit.
Okay.
It has to be the humans
Mm-hmm.
that have a deceitful spirit,
Okay.
a deceitful ruach. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's in context.
Okay.
We'll see it again.
Just making sure.
So if you draw a picture in your brain, I have purposefully decided to deceive, right? So you're in your brain and you have this thought of doing something. What was that word that you guys were using? Engaño, like to deceit somebody. There's an intent there, like you're intending to like harm somebody or do something wrong to somebody. It isn't something physical, like you're not physically doing anything. It's all just in your brain or in your mind, and that belongs to you, right? It's your intent. It's within you. So what ends up doing the bad thing is actually the animated force. Does that make sense? So it's the what do I want to call it? Like you're thinking, and then what you do is what is the action of your thoughts.
Right.
That makes sense?
So right here, I mean, are you just trying to say that like, so your brain, as far as saying right here, like whose spirit has no deceit. If we were to talk about somebody that actually does have deceit, if they were to act on that deceit, then there's actually that motive that actually, or not motive, but
It's the action
the
of
action
your
of them.
mind.
Right. Yeah, because you have to, right? You have to think
Mhm.
about it first before you do something. Yep.
So
Okay.
you can go to the next one. And so this is another one where Eddie was saying, like, if you read the context, you'll know that if it's God's spirit or your spirit.
Okay.
So you want to read it?
Yeah,
While I
so
take
it
a breath?
says, do not quickly provoke in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. And then at the bottom you put down, don't become mad quickly because getting angry is foolish.
So this is it's a verse, right? It says pretty much this verse is trying to say is like, when you get angry, you don't get angry. It's an emotion, but you get angry in your mind first. Like if somebody does something wrong, you get angry in your mind first. And so again, here you can see that it's not God's spirit, because God's spirit would not be angry. It's a human spirit.
Right. Because this one's actually specifically talking about the human brain itself, as far as how you're handling it. Right. Okay.
So a pretty cool thing that I came across was that God's ruach can interact with my ruach, or my mind, and influence me. So the ones that we've seen and we were talking about is people who do like, whose thoughts are deceitful, or not really, but we got into that topic of who's people who have deceitful, or they want to do something wrong. Their spirit is in the wrong place. But there is times where God's ruach can interact with your mind and influence you to do something good.
Yeah, it was like reading the Bible or whatever the case may be. I mean, sometimes you can have this little epiphany that says like, hey, I want to actually do something a little bit better or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it can be. So that's the next question, the trivial question. So who's the first?
Like first person in the Bible, Adam. What's the question saying?
Adam was given the breath of life, but in the Bible, who?
Is it Enoch?
No. So it's for later on in a different story, but it's just a kind of yes.
This guy over here.
Where? Why?
Because he had dreams.
He could interpret the dreams. So Joseph is being empowered differently by. So give me a second. Let me make this bigger. Did you go to the other one? Yeah. So so it's interpreting the dreams. So not anybody can interpret dreams, right? There has to be something more than a person's mind to be able to interpret that. So that's whenever you see that my mind and God's minds are in sync, and I'm able to do something that's very creative, very how do you want to say it? Like, it's not so sobrenatural, but just something amazing, something great. And that's what Joseph did. Because his mind was with God's, in sync with God's mind, he was able to interpret the dreams. And so that's why Pharaoh in that verse says, he says, can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God? So if the Spirit of God is in him, but it's through his will too. That makes sense?
Of this video, will we be able to interpret dreams?
Probably, but it has to be something that's.
I mean, like when we read, you remember when we actually read like Daniel? I mean, like, what kind of person was Daniel? Like, yeah, and we were like, this guy cannot be changed. Like, he is on it. Yeah, and the same thing we're finding right here with Joseph. Right? It's the exact same thing. So, I think what I was trying to figure out too when you were talking earlier was like maybe like only certain people that are really like, as far as like super faithful, like we found earlier with Noah being righteous and everything else, are the ones can really be able to actually receive God's message a lot easier in their brains.
There's another one too when the ark is being created that the same thing happens to this person. I can't remember his name, but he's able to create like the artisticness of the ark.
Okay.
And that's when, and I think I've seen it in the video too of the Bible Project, where like they're showing that God's spirit is with that person and he's able to like create these really, really, really good things. And sometimes it's like with musicians too, like some people just can't pick up a guitar, Christian, right?
Oh yeah, no, that's not gonna happen.
And it comes, like a guitar, like being musically inclined is really something that's been gifted.
Was it Elijah? Who was it? It's bothering me now.
Who?
The person that actually was actually artistic.
Oh, I
actually
can't
was
remember
drawing
his name.
everything.
Is there still people that have received the full spirit of God right now? Like they have the power to like, for instance, if something happens to you or something.
So,
Do
like
what?
Like you see how like
evangelicus and stuff like that.
read the dreams,
Yeah.
and then like these other people were able to like talk to animals and stuff like that. Is there people like that nowadays? Is that possible? That's what I'm saying.
Is it possible? I mean, the Bible says it is, but is it happening now? I don't think so.
Because look, there's a lot of people right now that there's a lot of people right now. Okay, the question is if people can still receive. Can you go to the last slide? I'm trying to see what it was. The full spirit. The full spirit. Yeah. Who can have the full spirit? Is there still people like that in the world? And the reason why I'm saying it is because there's a lot of people, and I see it a lot, like a lot, where people are like, Dios dice que mañana, blah 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 blah, y que blah 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 blah. Like,
There's certain,
how, like,
I think that there was one time where there was a sermon that was being said something about like talking about like we've heard it too, where like there's in the Bible, like whatever in the Bible right now, that's it. Like if they're talking about like for future or trying to predict the future and all this thing, it's like unless you're using Bible verses and like are able to say, hey, like God doesn't, for example, like God doesn't, we can't know the day and the time, right? But there's people that say, oh, on the day of blah, 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 or so many people are going to live, or what other things, right?
Yeah, but I think she's talking about like, you ever seen those like those like services when people are just like really like just.
But that's what I was getting at. Like,
Yeah.
we have to know when to make sure that what they're saying is what the Bible has taught us in comparison to like just maybe
because I heard something about like when people, talk like that, it's just yada yada, like.
Yeah, mumbo jumbo.
Yeah. But
You never heard that saying before? Sorry.
But then I remember I have a friend like long time ago before she got married. She said somebody that went to her church revealed to her who her husband was going to be and where her husband was at the time. And this was a long time ago. And then like time passed and like this lady married exactly the person that they told her. That's why I'm saying it.
well, I mean, we got to be careful with that because again, it could, yeah, like, and that's when you,
It was in the church too.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes we tend to use churches as like we're not a defense, but like we're making churches at this point in time. We're making churches similar to the world, and so we have to be really careful with that and know when something is being told to us that is true and something that is like, okay, like this is kind of, and you start feeling it too. You're just like, this doesn't feel right. Based off what I've been learning so far, like what they're saying doesn't make sense because why would somebody be predicting me marrying somebody when that's not what God wants me to know?
Yeah, it's like horoscopes instead, and that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
I mean, horoscopes is more like.
The crazy thing is that it was at a church where like.
Yeah, but a lot of stuff like that happens. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she did marry that person, but like, I was just shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, can I read the picture too? Like, I was shocked at the time. This was a
Well,
long
yeah.
time ago.
Yeah, I guess from that, like, too, I mean, like, say for, like, with Daniel, he had the power to pretty much interpret dreams, and, like, how great did he actually go with all of that stuff? The same thing with Joseph and how he led. And then you come back over here, and we try to figure out, like, hey, what power do you have, and how is that going to really help the whole community? And you just say, hey, you're going to find your husband. It's like, I mean, like, who's really gaining, I guess, a lot from that? I mean, if that's the most thing you can do as
Most
far as, like, a
important thing.
horoscope, it's kind of weird. I mean,
Yeah.
you would think that you would do a lot more than just say, hey, you're going to find the man of your dreams.
Because somebody did pray for me one time. Like, not about like who I'm gonna marry.
We already know it's George.
Yeah, we can tell you.
Yeah.
Anyway, somebody prayed for me like that one time. Like they came to me and like I don't even remember what they said. I was just freaking out about everything they were saying. That I was just like,
And
I
then,
didn't even pray. I was just frozen.
and then
like,
another
I
thing
was
that,
like, dude, what are you saying to me?
and another thing like that. I mean, Jesus wasn't like that. He didn't
Yeah.
like. He wasn't. He never. He never really. If you go back to his life, he never was a show person. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like even the day of the day that he was El Día de la Pascua, like he could have been celebrated, but he came in, you know, very humble, very like quiet,
Yeah.
and very like he didn't. And when there was a bunch of people too, I think when he started seeing that the crowds were starting to get big, he also like got away from it too,
Yeah.
because I don't know why, but I can't remember. But that's what ended up happening. He walked away from it.
Yeah, they were preaching one time, and they were like saying, like Jesus when he came down to earth, he wasn't a good-looking person because he was he wanted
No, it's true. That's what they
people
said. Yeah.
to like him for the way he is,
Yeah, that's right.
not like for his look. Because if he was like a good-looking person, everybody would be around him.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, what I had brought today is just, you know, because that was like my question is like, if somebody dies, because we're talking about Noah, right? And how the breath of life was taken away from these people. Well, how come breath of life isn't being taken away now with people that are living, like bad people? But that's because the breath of life, like that breath of life is in them, but it's their bad spirit that continues to
Yeah, with the
overpower
flesh
them.
and everything else. That's right. That's right.
So it's a quick thing. It wasn't too much. I mean, these verses are very straightforward. It was just pretty much talking about the flood and the description of how high it went, the 40 days, 150 days. So it was just a different thought process on Ruach, so that we could continue to continue to to continue to understand that term. So we talked about that it's God's spirit. It could be breath of life. It could be wind, and then on top of that, we can humans have their own spirit that can be deceitful, and it can it can collide with God's spirit. And then later on, it's a build up, because eventually we want to talk about the Holy Spirit too.
Right.
But it's a slow build up to it. So
Okay. Gotcha.
and that was it. Anybody had any questions?
All those questions.
What happened